Welcome, Facebook Live viewers. We appreciate you joining us again today. My name is Brad Bodis. I'm an attorney. I'm with the Bond and Bodis Law Offices, and we represent folks throughout the state of Alabama, throughout the state of Mississippi, and we help people with financial problems. And we know a lot of people after this last year are having financial challenges. Please, we just want you to know if you need help, be proactive, reach out for help. All of our offices are providing absolutely free initial consultations right now with an attorney, no cost, but reach out and be proactive, and we'll be glad to help you. In this week's Facebook Live, we're doing something special. I felt like we needed to do something to do a better job of recognizing Memorial Day and the meaning of Memorial Day. A lot of us spent this last weekend doing things we should do, celebrating our freedom. We were out with family. We spent time on the lakes, on the beaches. We enjoyed our long weekend. But I hope that all of us also took some time to focus on the true meaning of Memorial Day and why we recognize Memorial Day in our country. And that is very specifically to pay tribute to the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice, who gave their lives while serving our great country. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to have very recently retired Colonel Lori Rasmussen. Colonel Rasmussen most recently served as, and I want to make sure I get this right, Colonel, you led Detachment 12 of the Academy of Military Science Officer Training School in Montgomery, here in Alabama. And the Academy is one of the Air Force's preeminent officer commissioning squadrons, and it annually produces over 800 new officers for the Air Force, for the Air National Guard, and for the Air Force Reserve. Colonel Rasmussen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, sir. I really appreciate it. As I said to you earlier when we had a chance to talk, it's such an honor to hang out with great folks who are taking time out to honor our nation's fallen. I really appreciate your law firm's initiative to try to pay the correct respect to Memorial Day. It means a lot, not only to me, but certainly the local military community and the military community writ large.
Well, every time I meet a active member of the military service or a retired member, I try to say thank you for your service, but I don't feel like it's enough for the sacrifices you make. So again, thank you so much for what you and the other people who have served and are serving our military do for us to help us preserve our freedoms. The freedoms that we were able to celebrate this past weekend are available to us because of the sacrifices made by all of you. So you're appreciated. So Colonel Rasmussen, you and I this is the first time we've had a chance to talk directly, but I know that you share a friendship with two of my favorite law partners, Gail Donaldson and Mary Poole. And they have said just wonderful things about you. But if you would, I talked about your most recent role with the Air Force, but give us a little bit of background on you and your service while in the Air Force.
Yes, so I actually have had so many different assignments. So actually the assignment you just mentioned was my last second assignment here at Maxwell Air Force Base. So you guys will hear as I describe my career, I've spent and requested several assignments back to Montgomery because my very first assignment here was so rewarding. So we'll get into that. But I started out from a big family with not a lot of military members in my immediate family. I was the only one in my immediate family who served, but I really wanted to go to school in Colorado, believe it or not, and I'm one of 5 kids. So I just wanted a way. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and Colorado was a dream for me. And I was like, you know what? I could make it easier on my family if I applied to the Air Force Academy, which would have given me a 100% scholarship. So with very little background, or even I certainly didn't grow up saying I wanted to be a pilot or any of those. But right before my senior year, I just did my own research, came across the Air Force Academy, and decided to give it a try. So I applied, and believe it or not, I did not get accepted the first. Well, I'm from a very academic focused family, so I applied to 16 different colleges. So academic, making my, being aggressive and having my initiative to determine my own destiny is certainly something I got from my mom and dad. And my buddy actually got into the Air Force Academy from the state of Delaware. He was the number one choice, and shortly, literally 2 weeks before basic training, he got scared, and I got his slot, and I literally chipped off to basic training 14 days later. So my college choice changed like 3 times. I was going to go to Wake Forest. I was going to go to University of Colorado Boulder, and then it ended up being the Air Force Academy. So I chipped off to the academy, and pretty much didn't look back. So I think my parents were really shocked that I had so much. I was determined to kind of go, and quite frankly, I wanted to see if I could make it through, because it was really tough for 4 straight years. And it was funny. I wanted to go to school in Colorado so bad, and you're kind of in a semi, won't call it a prison-like environment, but it's certainly not your regular college experience. So I didn't get to explore Colorado nearly to the degree that I thought I would, but I made some of the best friends, most incredible relationships with some of our nation's most talented people. It was awesome. So went to the zoo. That's what we call it, the zoo. And I graduated in 1996. From there, I had earned a pilot training slot, and I went to Del Rio, Texas. And I always like to describe Del Rio, Texas as think of the end of the earth and go another 3 hours. That was my very first Air Force assignment. And that was a culture shock. Literally, there was like a runway, a grocery store, and pretty much not much else. A lot of dry desert, and good sunny airspace, and that's why I guess the Air Force decided to put a pilot training base there. So I spent about a year there. From that assignment, I went on to fly a reconnaissance aircraft out of Omaha, Nebraska. Flew missions all over the world in that. I flew the RC-135. And throughout this whole time, I had been dating my boyfriend at the time. That we met at the end of our freshman year at the Air Force Academy. I actually had a huge black eye when he met me. And
wait a second, that needs an explanation.
we just
Black
leave it there.
eye.
Actually, you know what? I can tell you, my really good friend, Blake Bellcase, I even remember everything about him. We were on the assault course in basic training, which was like an obstacle course and kind of like those Tough Mudder races that we have today that people actually pay to do. But I was low crawling in the dirt and the sand right behind him, and he accidentally got his combat boot and kicked me right in the eye, right in the face.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. So I went through the second half of basic training like all swolled up and looking tough. I think my parents were like, oh my gosh, what happened to our baby girl? But right at the end of basic training is where I met Reed, my husband. And we were really great friends, and we dated all the way through the academy. And then
so he was at the academy also then?
Yes, sir. We are the same year, but he flew A-10 fighter aircraft, and I went on to fly the reconnaissance aircraft. So we knew after we graduated, we were not going to be stationed together anytime soon. But we're still married to this day.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I think it's important to your story that you met your husband while at the Air Force Academy, and you both served long careers in the military. Now, has Reed retired also?
He did, and actually great. You kind of give me another chance. I just had he retired last year, and I had my retirement ceremony was last week. And you're thinking when you're talking in public, did I do a good enough job? And Reed is just an awesome human being. We supported each other all the way through our careers, and some assignments he was in the tougher assignment, some assignments I was in the tougher assignment, and we kind of just made it work. We spent 9 years in our career living apart, and somehow managed to have 3 kids. And everybody always said that at the end of a career, if you're still married to the same spouse and your kids are still talking to you, that is the sign of a successful career. So I'm grateful for those 2 things. They're still intact.
That's awesome. So we're talking about Memorial Day today. If my math is right, you would have entered the Air Force Academy just after Desert Storm. Would that be about right?
Yeah, that's right. In 1992 is when I graduated high school and shipped off to basic training at the Air Force Academy. Yep.
Did Desert Storm have any impact on your decision one way or another?
I can say it did not, from a perspective of I had no fear. I had no doubts. I just wanted the adventure. I was honestly, the best way to describe it is I wanted to see if I was up for the challenge of making it through basic training, then making it through the Air Force Academy, then making it through flight school. Like it was about challenging myself and trying to serve and be a part of something larger than myself. I actually grew up in a little suburb of Wilmington, Delaware, Hockessin, Delaware, and you're ready to fly. When you're 18, you're young, you don't know any better. I didn't appreciate a hometown enough, and I was like, how can I get away and go see the world? And that's what drew me personally to military, and the fact that we've done such good things. I think the men and women of our nation's military are such hardworking, dedicated human beings. I really have been blessed with the caliber of people I've gotten to work with, and that made me want to stay. I had my own personal reasons for why I joined, but then the reasons why I decided to stay and make it a career, certainly the caliber of people I've gotten to work with and some of the missions we've got to accomplish are not your everyday. Most of my friends from high school are all still in Hockessin, Delaware, which is an amazing town. But I was just itching for something with a little more adventure.
And you're right. When you're 18, I probably you don't have in your mind what type of risks am I taking, what type of potential sacrifices am I making. But what about your parents? There are baby girls heading off halfway across the country to enter the military. Was it a tough thing for them?
It's funny you hit on this because literally I praised my mom and dad because literally I praised them last week during my retirement ceremony. My 17-year-old son has expressed an interest in joining the Air Force, and now I'm getting asked to do what my mom and dad got asked to do.
Right.
And quite frankly, I don't know if I'm going to handle it as bravely as my parents did, because I realized they did do exactly what you said. They took me to the Philadelphia airport, put me on an airplane, and we're like, okay, I guess I'll get to talk to my daughter in 8 weeks. And literally there was no communication for 8 weeks. And I look back and that must have been incredibly difficult. And if I am going to get asked to do the same thing, I mean, obviously I'll try to be as brave as I can, but it certainly makes me appreciate my parents' sacrifice more than I understood when I was 18, And I remember I got the opportunity to do free fall, jumping out of airplanes and parachuting. And I remember the first time I jumped, and my parents were probably like stressed beyond, but they never let it show. And they were right there when that first phone call, when I told them I did it successfully, they were like my biggest cheerleaders. So, I mean, even though I'm nervous about my son doing it, I have to hide it better. So I'm going to try to be strong like my mom and dad. But I would say my parents could not have been a better supporting mom and dad through someone in their military career. They've been incredible, but they're not upset that I'm retired either. I think they're like, whew. Now they're like, we may have to send Foster into the military too. Okay. But they're great. They kind of they rode every ride, all the highs, all the lows. My mom and dad were there for it all.
Well, I've had this conversation with my wife as you have your own children and you watch what they go through and what they can put you through. It makes you love your own parents even more and appreciate the sacrifices they made. I think I mentioned to you that my niece will be attending the Air Force Academy in the fall, and she's so enthused, and she's such a wonderful young lady. But you're right; it's a big commitment being made, and as the mother of a son, you've been able to see it from both perspectives now.
I try to make Foster make the most educated decision he can. And then he said to me, he's like, I want to go into the family business. What can I say? Right.
Right. Well, that means that y'all have been excellent parents if he wants to follow in your footsteps. So that says a lot about
We'll
you and
see
your
about that.
husband. Says
Thank you.
about. All right, so let's get to the subject of today's episode, and that's to recognize the tremendous sacrifices that have been made by so many who have given it all in service to our country. But it's not just those service members, it's also their family members, as we've just discussed, the sacrifices that are made. Um, you have seen these sacrifices from every perspective, both as somebody entering the military, as somebody that served, and now somebody who may have a child going into the military. Tell us, Colonel, what Memorial Day means to you.
It certainly means something different than it did before I joined the military. I always thought I respected the holiday enough, but I'm sure as a young kid, I was focused on everything you said, which was the beach time, the lake time, the barbecues, and that is all still valid. But now it takes on a different meaning as I have lost a lot of friends and classmates. Throughout the last 25 years of service. So recently, my class at the Air Force Academy, I'm class of 1996. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary of our graduation date. And a recent post was out and it showed all of my classmates who passed away. And some of them were certainly, not duty related, but a large percentage of them were, whether it's training accidents, whether it was operational missions. And I think we have no idea. I don't even know truly the sacrifices that the families and the suffering that a lot of these people have gone through when they lose a spouse, a father, a mother, a daughter, a son. It's devastating. And a really dear friend of mine from the Air Force Academy, Lieutenant Colonel Morris Fontenot, he was one of my first friends at the Air Force Academy, and he passed away several years ago in an F-15 crash. And every year, I think about every single person that I've met who gave the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. And quite frankly, it makes me feel lucky and not like I want to be really respectful of what their families are going through and how they may be even suffering on Memorial Day. So it's a solemn day. But as my husband said, he goes, well, Lori, do you think any of the guys and gals that passed away would not want us to have a beer on and a barbecue or go to the beach on Memorial Day? And I said, and the people we know, I'm like, no, we have to have a toast in honor of our dear friends that we lost. So it is certainly a hard day, but you do feel more humbled in all the blessings that we have because of people that were willing to say, send me. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to lay down my life to defend the Constitution and defend our freedoms. And it certainly is a hard day every year.
It really is. And I want to make a point here of letting our viewers know how they can help the surviving family members of those who gave their lives in service to our country. And I know that there are several different organizations that are out there to help family members. In fact, we've made a point of putting website links at the bottom of our screen. If those of you out there want to do something special on behalf of those who sacrificed for each of us. Laura, can you tell us something about these organizations? I think one that you feel particularly fond about is the American Gold Star Families.
Absolutely. This organization, I've had friends who directly benefited from. They are a Gold Star family. What a Gold Star family means is they've lost an immediate family member in the line of duty, and it's pretty amazing. So I'll talk about my friend Lieutenant Colonel Morris Fontenot. His wife was my roommate pretty much for all 4 years at the academy. They have 2 girls. His daughter is now in her senior year at the Air Force Academy. So she'll be the mean senior training your freshman niece, by the way. But to see how this organization has supported their family, I think certainly my friend Kara can talk to it much more, in much more detail than I can. But I know between scholarships and just everything from spouse retreats where they kind of give the surviving spouses time away and fully all expense paid kind of mental health breaks, if you will, to kind of have a network in a community with other spouses that have also lost a loved one in combat. Lots of retreats as well for the children of deceased airmen or deceased soldiers. It's pretty powerful stuff. And again, there is a lot that America's Gold Star Families does for the families of the nation's fallen. So I definitely, if anybody out there wants to get engaged, wants to contribute, I highly recommend you check out those websites. A Blue Star Family, that was another one. Is for folks who have served in combat, and maybe they may not have lost their life, but they could be suffering physical ailments. They could be suffering from PTSD. And again, these are organizations that can help find resources and connect those service members to some of those available resources that can mitigate their suffering. So great to, could not say enough good things about them. And again, for all of your viewing public, anything you can do, it's greatly appreciated. Most military families, you kind of keep quiet. We don't like to ask for help, kind of ask for help only amongst the other military families because they know what you're going through. So, if you know a military family, somebody whose family, may have suffered a terrible tragedy, I think going out there and engaging with them and just kind of getting to know them and letting them talk about their lost loved one, things like that. They're little efforts, little things that go a long way to, like you said, sir, say thank you and recognize their son or daughter's contribution.
Colonel, I want to echo what you just said to our viewers. Folks, we probably all know somebody, a family member, friend of a family member that gave their life in service to our country. I certainly do. I lost my 18-year-old at the time cousin, George Bodis, who was a Marine at the age of 18 in Vietnam. His parents were never the same after that. It's back in the 60s. We all like to say thank you for your service, Colonel, and to members that have served. But this is an opportunity to do just a little bit more. As Colonel Rasmussen said, members of the military are proud. They don't ask for help, but reach out. Go to one of the websites that are at the bottom of our screen, and see what you can do to help, whether it's financial or otherwise. Please pay honor to those that made the greatest sacrifice of all for each of us. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Memorial Day. It was originally known as Decoration Day. It was originally celebrated after the Civil War, and it was originally only for those that gave their lives during the Civil War. It was an informal thing at first. People just put flowers on graves. It was, as we say, it was Decoration Day. And then our country decided to make it appropriately a national holiday. It was renamed Memorial Day. And I think it was in the 1960s that actually the date of the holiday was changed to the last Monday of May every year, so all of us could enjoy freedoms and celebrate a 3-day weekend every year during Memorial Day. Is there anything more from somebody that has served in the military that we should know about the history of Memorial Day, maybe the traditions that are recognized?
Well, I think you hit on the history perfectly well. I would say that from the traditional, it's interesting as a military member. I think most people don't know the true sense, the high operations tempo that we as a military have been keeping up, certainly since 9/11, and how that makes us kind of look at Memorial Day. So first off, less than 1% of our nation has served in the military. So you really, I'm going to touch a little bit about Montgomery and the local community. And my civilian friends here in Montgomery have really kind of welcomed me and my family in to be part of the community and make us feel like this is home. And I can say that's not like that every place the Air Force sent me. Sometimes people are very hesitant to want to reach out to a military member because they know they may have to move in 2 or 3 years. And so, people are just not as aware of what is actually being done by the members of our military every single day. And I can tell you the operation tempo continues to just do more with less. We have deployed more. I actually retired out of the Air National Guard. Our Air National Guard, our Air Force Reserve members have deployed in record numbers, certainly since post 9/11, trying to help out the active duty members of our military with the constant deployment taskings, executing our missions worldwide. And that ops tempo, it doesn't stop. It never stopped, even when I was non-deployed and I was here in the United States. So a lot of people, we are so grateful for a moment in honor of our fallen comrades to just say, let's take a break. Let's enjoy fellowship with one another, because sometimes you can't even think straight. You're just in the grind, is a term we say all the time. Or I always used to say to my friends in Washington, D.C., I know who I'm in the trenches with, because every day, 7 days a week, you're getting those phone calls, emails, whatever it may be. And you need a moment to just kind of catch your breath and enjoy each other and the people you work with on a daily basis. And I will say that happens. The cool part in a lot of the flying squadrons around the Air Force, and certainly Maxwell Air Force Base, they do a great job of almost forcing the time out, if you will, to really, I think our American culture is always go, go, go. And then it's heightened 1,000 times more in the military. So it forces you to take that moment. And certainly at the individual flying squadrons at the unit level, they do everything from getting the groups together, saying prayers. It's a special time, but it's a solemn time as well. So I don't know. The longer I stayed in the military, I want to, I feel like my classmates from the Air Force Academy, more and more names were getting added to the list of young people gone too soon. And again, it just makes me look at the holiday. Every year I get a little older, I get even a little more appreciative as each year goes on.
Well, hey, we all just need to remember, certainly on Memorial Day, but throughout the year, those who make sacrifices on behalf of all of us, and certainly those who made the ultimate sacrifice, that gave their lives in service to our country. Lori, I want to take a quick break here and recap on what we've discussed. And I am sorry, Colonel. I should not refer to you by your first name, out of respect for you and your service. Colonel, I want to take a quick break. And then after that, we've had some questions come in from some folks. And if you do have questions for Colonel Rasmussen, please go ahead and submit them. And we'll try to answer some of those questions after we recap here. Just a reminder of viewers, my name is Brad Bodis. I'm joined today by Colonel Lori Rasmussen, recently retired from the United States Air Force. And this is the Bond and Bodis Weekly Facebook Live, where we try to bring to our viewers items that are important to our community. Today we are talking about Memorial Day and the special meaning it should have for each of us as we pay tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for each of us, who gave their lives in service to our country as a member of the military. I do want to remind you that the Bond and Bodis law offices are located throughout Alabama and Mississippi, and we're here to help people with financial problems. Since COVID started up, we are offering absolutely free initial consultations. We'll do them by phone or video. We'll do them from the safety of your home or office. But I encourage people. I know there's a lot of anxiety out there right now. We talked in our episode last week about the fact that mortgage forbearances and landlord-tenant forbearances, eviction forbearances are coming to an end soon. And there's a lot of anxiety out there. So get out in front of these problems, be proactive, reach out to one of us. Again, we're offering absolutely free initial consultations with an attorney. The episode last week about mortgage modifications is available on our firm's website and at our Facebook page. And this episode also, if you know a veteran, if you know somebody interested in the military, if you just want to bring home what Memorial Day is all about to somebody that you know, please refer them back to this video, which will be available again on the Facebook page and on our firm's website. I think there are a lot of people that need to hear what Colonel Rasmussen's had to share with us today about the meaning of Memorial Day and the sacrifices made by the members of our military. So again, if we can help you, please reach out to us. Colonel Rasmussen, we have had some questions come in. Some are directly related to Memorial Day. Some, I think, more about military service in general. But I want to give you a chance to answer some of these if you're willing.
I'm willing.
So I have a viewer here that says, I'm considering enlisting in a branch of the military. Which one would you recommend? I think I know what your answer is going to be here. Air Force, Navy, Army, or Marines?
Okay, so I'm partial. Of course, I'm going to say Air Force, but I would say this. I think I think a lot of young people out there today don't know what is available out there and what each service provides, right? I mean, a lot of young kids today don't even know what our service components are. They don't know we have a Navy, an Air Force, a Marine Corps, a Coast Guard. They don't know. So first, I would tell the young person who asked that question, first, do some research, right? Look at no kidding the missions of each of the services. What does the Army do? What does the Air Force do? And go through it. I think when you're young and 18, like I was just thinking flying airplanes, going around the world, and a free way to pay for college. And I certainly didn't think, I mean, I was 18 at the time. I wasn't thinking about making Air Force a full career the way I did. So I look into jobs. How is the service going to take care of a family? We have a saying in the Air Force, we recruit an individual, but we retain a family. So, I would encourage whoever asked that question to do the research on what kind of services are provided to, where are the bases, where are the Army posts, where are the naval air stations located, where are the Air Force bases, because you do want to maximize, for me, schools matter, right? Wherever I was going to get stationed by the Air Force, I needed to double check what my school choices were for my kids. But I wasn't thinking about those types of things when I was 18. And you don't even, one other thing I would say is when you're approaching this major life decision, you don't have to sign up for 25 years, right? You can just use your military time to help you mature, help you get educational benefits, help you develop your leadership skills and develop a skill. And you can get out whatever your minimum enlistment is. In the Air Force, it's usually a period of 6 years. And then you can go and do whatever you want. And you may have a great thing on your resume. So I personally chose the Air Force because I thought I didn't like the idea of living on a boat in the Navy, and the Army. Quite frankly, I think I was more drawn to the idea of the technology available in the Air Force and flying airplanes, which is what led me to the Air Force. But I have plenty of friends who love being soldiers and deploying with a group of guys and gals, and so many amazing women that I know. My friend's getting ready to send her daughter off. She starts basic training. She's your niece's age, Brad. And so she's going to West Point, right? So each service has its pros and cons, and you just have to do the research to determine what is most, what do you weigh more than the other. But I am going to finish out by saying go Air Force.
So, and this is a question from me, and it's to touch upon a comment you made earlier. You said that only 1% or less than 1% of people in this country serve in the military, and I regret. I was close to joining the military when I was very young, and made a decision not to. I don't want to get into the politics of the issue, but what are your thoughts on mandatory military service?
I think it's interesting, right? I can answer that. I may have a different answer as a military member as I do as a parent. So I understand the complexities of the whole discussion. I do think I'll look at my South Korean counterparts. In South Korea, they do have a mandatory service period of 2 years for, I can't remember if it's women too. It may be for the women as well. But I certainly know it was for males that they did a 2-year commitment serving. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be serving in the military. I just think if we had an obligation for all of us to serve in some capacity in a federal agency. It doesn't necessarily have to be military. I just think it's good for all citizens to have a vested stake in our nation's future. And I think it makes young people kind of learn a little bit of grit, a little bit of teamwork. I think, you see where you really are developing what I like to call a servant's mindset. I tried to lead my Air Force career in a way that I was a servant leader, which means, I'm trying to take care of my troops. Like leadership is a responsibility, not something not a free pool parking spot up close, right? The leader should be working the hardest, should be leading by example. And I learned those skills when I was young at the Air Force Academy and built on them throughout my career. So I do think having our youth have a vested stake in the nation if they did some kind of obligatory service. Maybe not for 2 years. Maybe that sounds too long. Maybe a year. But I think it helps. I do think it gives people perspective as they then maybe proceed into the private sector.
But then the second half of that, from the perspective of an officer, do you want young soldiers that are there because they want to be, or do you want soldiers there that
Correct.
have been drafted?
Absolutely. And we've been blessed that, they got rid of the draft, was what I want to say, 1973. We've been blessed that we've been able to still, recruit young people who are willing to expand their horizons. I think that may not always be the case. There may be days where, I said earlier that, serving in the military is a family business. And I don't know. I think less and less military families are encouraging their young people to serve as well. Because it does take a toll on kind of certainly like a family with 3 or 4 generations of military members. My God, that is a lot to ask of one family, right?
Right.
It is. We're lucky right now. I'd say right now I know the Air Force is able to make its recruiting numbers. We've been able to do so for several years, but I don't know if that will always be the case. But you don't want folks. I mean, they did see what you were talking about, Brad, when they had the draft. It would be folks who got in trouble or made some bad decisions, and then they just took the professionalism of the force and worked it way down instead of making it more professional and no kidding. A fighting force that we need to fight today's wars.
Right. It's interesting. There are a lot of perspectives on that, but I encourage this young person that asks to do as Colonel Rasmussen suggested, and to explore all of your options and do the research. It's going to be a life altering decision, and sometimes when we're young, we jump into things too quickly. Do the research. All right. Well, here's another interesting question. You talked about the opportunities. Do you get to live in another country if you enlist in the military?
Absolutely. It depends. It's not a guarantee. So it goes to, we always like to say, and I'm only going to speak to the Air Force now, the needs of the Air Force come first. And so how our young airmen compete and perform in their various jobs. So what it's called is an AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code. So you could be a maintenance personnel, and they have enlisted and officer positions for aircraft maintenance. You could be an enlisted personnelist, where you're helping with all of the support functions to help our airmen get to war, be able to deploy. Just depends on your specific career field within the Air Force, and where there's a need at some of our bases. But absolutely, as an enlisted member, we have folks all over Europe, all over Asia, really cool places. I always say the Navy has pretty awesome assignments, and so does the Air Force. I don't know so much about the Army, but but there are opportunities to go overseas, and it would be great, But I always say this: you have to be prepared for every amazing assignment. There could be an equally more remote, more desolate assignment too. And I always found what I've always told my young folks that I tried to mentor. I had one young airman who was so upset with his assignment. And I basically said, look, you have 2 choices. You can have a positive attitude about this or a negative attitude. And it could be the best assignment of your career. And my friends and myself, I've had some less than ideal locations, but I always usually got to work with the best people. So when I look back at the assignments, I'm like, the location may not have been great, but the job or the people themselves ended up being incredible. So you take the good with the bad.
And I was fascinated earlier. You talked about friends in South Korea. I'm sure, regardless of where you were stationed, you interacted with people all over the world, which had to be fascinating.
It was great. Yeah.
All right. Is military life good for a marriage, young children?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. That's how I say. So I've been married. Now I'm gonna have to do math in public. 23 years. My husband and I dated for 6. So I'll make it clear to your audience. So I did 25 years post Air Force Academy graduation, plus my 4 years at the Air Force Academy. So I technically wore the uniform for 29 years, but I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to get the extra 4 years of credit, 25 years of active service. So in that time, like I mentioned earlier, my husband and I lived apart a long time. And here's what I can say. More and more families today in 2021, both spouses are working with the cost of living, the cost of colleges. So I think it's less about the military and more about dual professionals, regardless, whether that's in the civilian sector or in the military sector. And so but I would say, like for my wonderful husband, Reed, I truly did marry my best friend. And we had kind of what we thought was our goal as a couple. And if we kept our eyes on that goal, which we did, we could achieve it. So I'm not saying it's easy. There were times where his job was super intense, and then my job was super intense. And our job that we left in Washington, D.C., both jobs of ours were super intense as colonels, and it was brutal. But you have to have that good communication. And quite frankly, you need that in a marriage period, no matter what your career is. So I will say a lot of people, when I was a very young lieutenant, kind of encouraged my husband and I to break up, and that it would never work with 2 pilots and we should just throw in the towel. And we didn't. We knew we cared about each other, and he wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to be a heavy pilot. I flew large aircraft, and he wanted to achieve his dreams and I wanted to achieve mine. And I was like, well, we would end up, before we had kids, we would pick a city and we could afford to just go to that city and it would be incredible. So obviously it's more complicated when you have kids. So I'm talking to you as an Air Force spouse as well. And it is hard. I mean, I had amazing, I like to say my village. And that's part of the reason why I ended up here in Montgomery, because my civilian friends, I like to call them my family, the friends that became family to me. And that's hard to find regardless of what job you are in. But if you're going to have a dual professional marriage, you need to find your village regardless. So yes, there's some more complicating factors when you serve. But I will tell you, my kids, they're resilient kids. They have no problems making friends. They are very resilient. They are very humble in terms of kind of what they expect. They kind of know that the world doesn't revolve just around them, and they got to go in and make a positive difference. And hopefully we've instilled in them a servant's heart and kind of have an attitude of gratitude as much as they can. And I honestly attribute all that to my time serving in the military. So for me, I'd say it's turned out pretty well. So that it's been good for my kids to experience it. They have friends all across America, all across the world that they stay in touch with. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Well, and your kids also had 2 parents that set great examples, and demonstrated sacrifice and commitment. And I've got to believe that's something good for children as they're growing up, to have parents like that. Again, the kids, the military spouse, which both of you were, the entire family, your parents, we talked about that earlier, the sacrifices they made, it's commitment made, sacrifices made by the entire family. But a lot of good can also come from those sacrifices.
It's funny, Brad, you were saying I honored my 4 siblings at my retirement speech, because it's not easy to have a sibling serve either. And, I think what's really at that heart of that individual's question, it's kind of like, is it good for family life? I think you have to know the person you're marrying, in terms of what that person's strengths and weaknesses are, so that, some people have a really hard time just getting inserted into a community and knowing nobody. But I also think the military does a good job of, I remember the first time I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, I knew not one person in Omaha, and I was like 23. And then within a matter of like a month, you have a military community that's kind of instant. And that's the kind of camaraderie that I've watched with some of my friends who are military spouses. And these mostly women, certainly there are a lot of male spouses, they pick up they would love to have their own professional goals. Many of them still do. I don't know how they make their professional careers work and still pick up and move wherever the Air Force sends their spouse. But these are really amazing women and men who somehow they really are the backbone of their family. And I would say a lot of them are very proud of their military time. So I'd say get to know, make sure you know your partner's strengths and weaknesses before you consider military life for the entire family.
Wow. Great advice. This next question kind of ties into that, and I guess it goes more to the recruitment end for the military, but what type of benefits are provided to my family if I become a soldier?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's all of the above. There's so much. Okay, so medical benefits, educational benefits. You can get a housing allowance. There's so many services. I'll just talk at Maxwell Air Force Base. We have a morale, welfare, recreation, MWR, a lot of access to military discounts throughout not only the local community, but throughout the country. I would say the biggest ones, the real benefits long term are your education benefits that you may be in a position to pass down to your kids. That is something that post 9/11 GI Bill is definitely a retention tool that helps you. You're like, okay, I'm going to invest not just for myself by serving. I'm really investing in my child's future, and that's very very attractive. That is a good retention tool for our service. So the medical, I have so many friends on the civilian side that continue to tell me how good we have it with our military TRICARE. And, I try not to take it for granted. I'm sure I have, but now that I'm a retiree myself, I'm grateful that I don't have to be as worried about my healthcare costs that I know many of my civilian counterparts are.
Well, you mentioned the GI Bill. My dad served in the Navy during and just after World War II, and then was able to make his way through college and support a family as a result of the GI Bill.
Yeah.
And we owe that and more to those that serve our country. But it is good to know that there are benefits out there for both service members and the members of their family. So I want to ask this kind of broad question here. We talked about your feeling about Memorial Day while you were a member of the active military. Tell us about how your feelings changed about Memorial Day over the years. From your perspective, when you just entered the military until now as a retiree.
I certainly probably didn't care about Memorial Day when I was a young teenager. I don't.
Right.
I look at Foster, my oldest son, actually all three of our kids. I have two high schoolers, two boys, 17 and 15, and they seem to get it more than I did when I was their age because I think of our military affiliation. And
Right.
they knew people that have passed away. They knew my friends. And so I would say you realize just the true impact of the service member had while he or she was on this earth, but then you also see the sheer devastation after they're gone. We had a rough year in the Air Force. A lot of fighter pilots, we had a couple accidents, and it's cost of doing business, right? We know it's an inherently dangerous business what we do. I don't think I thought about it because I was young, and I think maybe the man above designs it that way. Like when you're young, you think you are fearless, you think you are invincible, and then you realize we really are all human. But it makes me just try to be more empathetic and more compassionate to others, because it doesn't, not just military members, but any community that supports somebody who's struggling. Life is very hard, and you have to try to enjoy as much of it as you can. And I will tell you that I've seen such strength with some of my friends who have suffered immense loss, and it just makes you take things for granted much less, or at least most of the time.
It's you're right. I guess God did give young people that attitude that they're invincible for a reason, because we need our young folks to go out there and and conquer the world.
True.
You just wish, as a parent, you hope that they realize the significance and do the things you talked about earlier. Really study options and look into things before they leap.
Absolutely, because it is a serious business, and when you have, certainly when I was an aircraft commander and I had a crew of about 30 people, 35 people, I was young, I was 25, 26, and you
Wow.
realize that level of responsibility that you are responsible for these 35 lives on board, and I that's when I started, in my mid 20s, like really like focused, and you don't want to screw up. You want to do your best for your fellow airmen, and for their families. And so it makes you perform at your best. It's adrenaline pumping at times, but I know I did not have a real appreciation when I was first entering. I didn't, no, I was young and
Uh,
fun.
yeah, young but full of energy. We've had another good question come in here. What life skills did service in the Air Force give you that you would not have received from another job?
Yeah, that is a great, great question. I would say number one, adapting to change. I have been blown away. I guess I took it for granted. Well, so my mom and dad, I kept my family home all the way. They bought it when I was 4 years old and they sold it when I was 40. So, all of my siblings, we had the same teachers growing up through school. We didn't have to move. We were very fortunate. And it's, some people think moving is wonderful. And in a lot of ways it is. I was shocked though, just how many people have never moved. They just graduated from high school and they stayed in the same spot, and that's amazing. It's great for those people if that's their life choices. But what the military did for me was I've lived in a lot of different parts of the US. I've traveled all across the world, so it's given me a perspective of kind of blooming where you're planted, having that mental toughness to kind of make the best of whatever situation you're given. And that certainly was honed, when I was younger. I don't know if I necessarily had that, but I was, like I said, my very first real assignment after flight school was in Omaha, Nebraska, where I didn't know anybody. And I remember being homesick. And my boyfriend was in North Carolina at the time, and you just got to make lemonade out of lemons. I mean, I think that's a life skill that we all need, and you certainly get that in the military, without a doubt.
That's not exactly the answer I thought you would give. I thought there would be more about technical skills, perhaps fitness skills, but boy, you're right. Just learning how to interact with different people, learning how to adapt to change, that is so important. We talked about earlier about how I relocated from one part of the country to another, and you did the same and multiple times. My oldest son, recently moved from one state to another, and those skills that adapting are very important. Um,
Well, Brad, it was really like mental toughness. I mean, that's really a skill that sometimes I feel like our young people lack a little bit. Like, I think we all want instant gratification, and that's certainly what our culture kind of promulgates. But having the mental toughness that if you fail and it doesn't go perfectly, that there can be another path, and you being mentally tough or persistent and resilient to kind of go after your goal. I mean, because I always feel like the Air Force can train anyone to do any job most of the time. I mean, there are brilliant people, and certain jobs are designed for those very brilliant top 5%. But I think the Air Force trains its people extremely well in a specific career field. So I could train a lot of people in the military or in the civilian sector to do a certain job. But it's other soft skills that make you really comfortable in unknown environments. That cool. Now I'm in a new environment. I'm a retiree. Talk about a different environment.
and you're young with that's you're young and you have all of this knowledge and experience that you bring with you today. It's just fantastic, folks. The ultimate thing here, though, is service to our great country. If there weren't people out there doing what Colonel Rasmussen did, if there aren't people out there doing what her husband did, if there weren't young people willing to enlist in the service of our country today, and ultimately, if it hadn't been for those people that made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, we would not enjoy the freedoms we enjoy today. I've been fortunate enough to travel the country, and I know what a wonderful place we live in. Don't take what we have for granted. Be thankful for those who sacrificed so much for us. And please pay attention to the banners at the bottom of our screen. They'll be available on our Facebook pages. Also, there are organizations that you can support that will help take care of the family members of those that sacrificed all, that will provide both monetary and emotional support. Get involved. We owe so much to the members of our military. Get involved and pay back what you can to these people. Colonel Rasmussen, I always like to finish these episodes. I'd like to give you a chance. I've tried to cover the gambit of things here. We're running up against the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything that I may have missed that you think is important for our viewers to know about military service and or Memorial Day?
I'll start with the first question. I think a lot of people are intimidated by maybe they think someone in the military, certainly when they see them in uniform, maybe they're not as approachable or whatever. One thing I'd really like your viewers to know is that the military is a reflection of our society. So these are men and women. You take away their uniform, they're just like you and me now, like they're just trying to live their best life and contribute where they can. So if you see somebody, or you find out maybe a child is in school with your child and that child's parents may be military, trying to welcome them and incorporate them more into the community. That community feel is so critical because I didn't realize, so many of us, whether you're military or not, we don't get to live near family. So when you don't have your family close by, that local community becomes that much more important. So I would say when you see a military person, ask them about their life, ask them about their choices. It doesn't have to be, yes, I guess I took it for granted wearing the uniform, and I would show up to my kids' baseball games, whatever, in my fatigues or whatever. And I could see how that would be slightly intimidating, but just normal people, like reflection of society, and we love to get to know and be embedded in the community to make that assignment feel just a little piece of home while we're there. So that's for that. And then Memorial Day, I'll just say we're all very blessed to live in the United States. Certainly grateful to have served and to have worked. I said it earlier, I'll say it again, with the best people. I don't know if I'll ever be as lucky again to work with the caliber of people I did while I served, but there's a great cohesion and a great camaraderie amongst military members. And when somebody is lost in the line of duty, it has ripple effects and devastation. And we just need to be there as much as we can for the extended family and the local co-workers who had to suffer that loss. And any small thing, like you said, sir, going to these websites, trying to find a way to get engaged and try to help. It's pays dividends, and we kind of all owe it. We owe it as a nation to our fallen soldiers.
Amen. Colonel Rasmussen, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. I want to encourage our viewers, if you know somebody that's considering a military career, if you know somebody that just needs to understanding the sacrifices made by members of our military, please refer them back to this Facebook Live. Colonel Rasmussen, I want to thank you again. I want to thank your husband, both of you, for your service. I want to thank your parents and your siblings and your kids for the sacrifices they've made for all of us. To all the members of our military out there, God bless all of you. Thank you for what you do for us. And for the family members of those that have made the ultimate sacrifice, we are so thankful to you. We love you and we want to support you. And I intend to do more going forward. On behalf of Colonel Rasmussen, on behalf of all Otis, please be proactive. Please reach out for help if you need it. Please help out our brothers and sisters who are serving in the military and their families. Colonel Rasmussen, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your support. Thank you for your local audience. It's great. So keep up the great work, and you all have a great week.
You too.